You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
It looks like Graham Platner is gone. But the Dems' real problem isn't going away, based on an article by D. Earl Stevens. Maine didn't produce a crisis. Party machine did. The allegation is not the whole story. The source begins with a theory. This allegation that Graham Platner sexually assaulted a woman 5 years ago, and it is right about one thing. If that charge is true, he should be finished. That is not a strategic inconvenience. It is harm, but the piece does not stay there. It uses the allegation as a launchpad to indict Democratic leadership, donor politics, and the stale reflexes of party power. That pivot matters. When a story about violence becomes primarily a fight over factional advantage, accountability gets blurred on purpose. Who actually holds power? The power in this story is not with the loudest people online or the activists the piece sneers at as from away. The real power sits with Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Senate establishment, the donor class, and the nomination machinery that decides which candidates are treated as legitimate before voters even see a real contest. The source says those elites tried to impose Janet Mills, a 77-year-old governor, on Maine as the safe choice against Susan Collins. That is the central fact of power here. Not persuasion, but control. Not a campaign of ideas, but an attempt to pre-clear the outcome. Maine is not a blank screen. The piece is at its strongest when it admits that Mainers are not waiting for coastal consultants to explain their politics to them. Platner, in the source's telling, connected because he spoke to frustration that is already there. Whether one likes him or not, that is a reminder that voters are not empty vessels for party branding. But the article also reveals its own blind spot. It treats local support as proof that any establishment objection is just condescension. That is too easy. A candidate can resonate with working people and still be unfit for office. A strong anti-establishment message does not erase personal conduct. The task is not to protect the machine, but it is also not to canonize the challenger, the party that keeps choosing stasis. The deeper indictment here is the one the source keeps circling. Democrats keep mistaking managed decline for strategy. Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Obama, Schumer, Mills. Different names, same logic. Pick the familiar figure, suppress the insurgent, and call the result responsibility. That is how a party ends up preaching change while behaving like a retirement home for political caution. The source is right that this pattern has consequences. When Democrats keep elevating cautious, compliant, donor-friendly candidates and then act shocked when voters stay cold, they are not suffering from bad luck. They are reproducing the problem. What this story really shows. This is not a story about one candidate's collapse. It is a story about how elite Democrats respond when a message lands outside their control. They do not simply disagree. They move to contain, reroute, and sanitize it. Then they call that judgment. The larger pattern is brutal and familiar. Entrenched power prefers a predictable loss to an unpredictable challenge. That is how Collins survives. That is how stale leadership becomes serious. And that is how a party that claims to defend democracy can still behave like a gatekeeping club that mistakes discipline for legitimacy. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternet for today's article. With the automated voice of Labritz, our thanks for listening.